calf born with two fully working faces, a rattlesnake with two heads fighting over food, a fish that somehow grew two mouths, a cat with three eyes, frogs sprouting extra legs in a Minnesota pond, and more. These are disturbing mutations discovered in nature that terrified scientists. In February 2024, a farm in southwest Louisiana woke up to a very unusual birth. One of the cows at a farm called Brew Farms had given birth overnight to a calf with two faces. From the ears back, the body looked normal, but the front of the head had four eyes, two noses, and two mouths. The owners named the calf Deux Face, Two Face. Cases like this are extremely rare. According to the farm, the odds of a birth like this are estimated to be around 1 in 400 million. Even more surprising, the calf was alive. That almost never happens. Most animals born with this condition, known as polycephaly, are stillborn or die just after birth. The calf couldn't stand on its own at first though, so the farmers had to support it with a sling and bottle feed it because it couldn't nurse normally from its mother. But both faces were actually functioning. The calf could breathe through both noses, and the eyes reacted to light and movement. The two mouths even moved together, although one was slightly deformed. Unfortunately, as expected, it didn't live long. It died after just 26 days. In 2019, researchers surveying the Pine Barrens in New Jersey came across something they almost never see in the wild. While checking a rattlesnake den, two researchers named Dave Schneider and Dave Burkett spotted a tiny newborn snake moving through the leaves. When they picked it up, they realized it had two fully formed heads on a single body. Since both the guys were named Dave, the snake quickly got the nickname Double Dave. The baby rattlesnake was only about 9 inches long and just a few weeks old. This kind of mutation is called bicephaly, which happens when what should have been identical twins don't fully separate during early development, so the embryo develops two heads on one body. Scientists say it's basically the reptile version of conjoined twins. Animals like this almost never survive long in the wild. Each head has its own brain, so they try to control the body at the same time. One head might want to move left, while the other wants to go right. Not the most efficient way to hunt or avoid predators. Not to mention when it comes to actually eating, both heads may compete for the same meal. So Dave and Dave decided to bring Double Dave into captivity where it could be studied and taken care of. In August 2019, a woman named Debbie Geddes was out fishing on Lake Champlain near the New York-Vermont border when she hooked what felt like a pretty solid catch. At first she just felt like it was a big trout, but when she finally pulled it into the boat, she immediately noticed this thing was not normal. It had two mouths, one above the other. When we got it in the boat, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Two mouths, and this fish was healthy and thriving, Debbie said. Photos of the trout were shared online by a local fishing group called Naughty Boys Fishing, and within days, thousands of people were sharing it and arguing about what could have caused it. Some thought it might be a genetic defect that happened while the fish was developing. Others wondered if it might have started as an injury that healed in a strange way. Even experienced fishermen who saw the photos said they'd never seen anything quite like it. Next up, we have a Guinness World Record-setting cat, or cats depending on how you look at it, Frankenlouie, or as some referred to them, Frankenlouie, which is kind of mean, but I also do kind of love that name. In 1999, a kitten was born in Massachusetts with an extremely rare condition called diprosopus, sometimes known as Janus condition. Instead of having two separate heads, the kitten had two faces on a single head. He had two mouths, two noses, and three eyes. Most cases like this end with the animal dying within a few days. Because of that, the kitten was set to be euthanized, but one veterinary nurse, Marty Stevens, decided to take the kitten home instead and see if she could keep him alive. She named one face Frank and the other Louie. Keeping him alive took a lot of work at first. Stevens tube-fed him until he was 3 months old because she was afraid he wouldn't be able to eat. Even though he had two faces, the cat only had one brain and one esophagus, and only one of the mouths actually worked for eating. The third eye in the center of his face didn't function and never blinked, so he looked like he was constantly staring. Kinda creepy, but Frankenlouie survived far longer than anyone expected. In 2012, Guinness World Records officially recognized him as the longest living Janus cat ever recorded. He ended up living 15 years, about the normal lifespan for a house cat. In August 1995, a group of middle school students visited a small wetland near Henderson, Minnesota, as part of a school field trip. While catching frogs along the edge of the pond, they started noticing something strange. A large number of the frogs had serious deformities. Some were missing legs, others had extra ones, a few had limbs that were bent or growing out at odd angles. When scientists investigated the site, they found that half of the frogs in that pond showed some type of abnormality. That number was far higher than what biologists would normally expect to see in the wild, and that was unsettling. Being that frogs live partly in water and partly on land, they're often used by scientists as an early warning sign that something may be wrong in the environment. So this set off a large investigation across Minnesota. Researchers surveyed wetlands around the state, examined nearly 25,000 frogs from 195 different locations. They documented deformities like extra limbs, partially formed legs, missing feet, and abnormal bone growth. In some wetlands, more than 60% of frogs were affected. One major cause scientists identified was a tiny parasitic worm called this. The parasite infects tadpoles while their legs are still forming. When that happens, it can mess up limb development, sometimes causing frogs to grow extra legs or deformed ones. But researchers also found that parasites didn't explain every case, and in some areas the exact cause was unclear. In 1966, a gorilla was captured in a forest in Equatorial Guinea that looked completely different from any other gorilla anyone had seen. It had pure white fur, pale skin, and light blue eyes. The gorilla was named Snowflake, and he's still the only known albino gorilla ever documented. Albino animals like Snowflake are born without normal amounts of melanin, of course. Genetic testing later showed Snowflake's albinism came from a mutation in a gene he inherited from both parents. Because of this lack of pigment, though, Snowflake was unusually sensitive to sunlight and prone to health issues. Unfortunately, this made him more vulnerable to skin cancer, which eventually caused his death in 2003. Snowflake spent most of his life at the Barcelona Zoo, where he became a huge attraction. Albino gorillas are so rare that scientists said this case was 1 in a million. After most woolly mammoths disappeared from the mainland, a tiny group survived on Wrangel Island in the Arctic for thousands of years. When scientists looked at their DNA, they found a lot of problems. These last mammoths had tons of harmful mutations building up over generations because the population was so small and isolated. Some of the mutations affected their fur, making it kind of satin-like instead of the thick wool we usually picture. Being so cut off, the mammoths couldn't get rid of these genetic problems, and over time it added up, making them weaker, less capable of dealing with sicknesses and changes in the weather. Scientists think this pileup of bad mutations probably helped push the last Wrangel Island mammoths to extinction about 4,000 years ago. Just recently in Brazil, paleontologists came across a strange fossil jawbone in a riverbed. At first they thought it was just a deformed bone that had been pressed weirdly by rock, but when they found 8 more just like it, that's when they realized they'd found a whole new species. They named it Tunica amicola, and the fossils date back about 275 million years, long before dinosaurs ruled the planet. Its jaw was nothing like what you'd expect. Instead of teeth pointing up or down like normal animals, the main teeth pointed out to the sides. Even the part of the jaw that would face the tongue was twisted upward and covered in rows of tiny grinding teeth called denticles. The lead scientist who studied it, Jason Pardo, said the jaw has this weird twist that drove them crazy trying to figure out. They spent years wondering if it was a deformation until they realized every jaw had the same twist. Scientists think it used its jaw more like a grinder than a slicer, maybe chomping on plants or small bits of food in the water. They haven't found anything beyond the jaws yet, so things like what its body looked like are still a bit of a mystery. In 2011, a fisherman in the Gulf of California caught a pregnant dusky shark. When the shark was cut open, several embryos were found inside, and most of them looked normal, but one of them clearly didn't. The embryo, which was about 22 inches long, had a single eye sitting right in the center of its head. When photos of it started getting shared around online, people thought it had to be a hoax. I mean, just look at this thing. It looks like a Muppet. But marine biologists who looked at the specimen said the photos were real. The condition is called cyclopia, which happens when the front part of the brain doesn't split into 2 halves the way it normally does during early development. And because of that, the face never forms 2 eye sockets. The embryo ends up with one central eye instead. Researchers also noticed something interesting about the eye itself. It had actually developed optical tissue, so it had formed the way a regular eye would. Even so, sharks with this condition almost never survive. Cyclopia usually comes with severe brain problems, as you can probably imagine, and so it probably wouldn't have lived long if it had actually been born. In May 2025, a team called Rattlesnake Solutions was called to a backyard in Scottsdale, Arizona to pick up what they thought would be a pretty normal western diamondback rattlesnake. Instead, they got one that looked quite different. Instead of the standard crisscross diamond pattern these snakes are named for, this one was covered in round, curvy spots that looked more like a leopard's coat. When the team shared the photos of the snake on social media, they were just as amazed as everyone who saw the pics. In their words, in the many thousands of diamondbacks we've seen over the years, this is a first. That's wild when you think about, how many rattlesnakes they encounter every year. They didn't think it was a hybrid with another species either. The prevailing theory is that it's just a pattern mutation, a fluke genetic change that gave the snake the unusual spots. But according to the group's owner, Brian Hughes, this kind of thing is insanely rare. He said that over the past 25 years, only 3 snakes with a similar pattern mutation have ever been seen. This one, another near the same area in 2016, and the first about 20 years ago. And now I'm going to release all of you back into the wild. I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.